When we were in Japan the second time, particularly, we were spending quite a bit of time on the trains. And quite often we will be travelling at the time of, you could call it a rush hour. that has a different concept. In England, particularly, the rush hour is people all elbows trying to get on the train. A rush hour in Japan is very civilized. People walk, they wait at the door, they step aside for people to get off, they nod to each other, they bow to each other, acknowledge each other. Not all the time, of course, but they rush very slowly. Or appear to. Maybe it's my idealised impression, I don't know. But that struck me. It happens in England, but because England is so multicultural, if you get a lot of people from different cultures mixing with the English, British, at busy stations in the centre of London, a lot of people just try to push on as quickly as possible. A lot of them don't, but it has a completely different feeling to the Japanese kind of version of a rush hour. But it kind of instilled in me how, I don't know if uniform is the right word, but how similar a lot of the Japanese gentlemen, the professionals, the salary men, the corporate men or whatever, seem to be. They dress very similarly, sort of dark coats. Quite often they'll have briefcases. And because a lot of Japanese have quite dark hair, there seemed to be this kind of glasses, perhaps dark glasses. It builds up a sort of multiplier effect, and you can look along the carriage and see first different heights, different shapes, and that sort of thing. Some of them with other people chatting, and some just quiet, just jostling along, standing up. But there seems to be such a uniform vision of the Japanese professional working man, and they're so serene, so quiet on the whole. And again, I might be being selective. Maybe it's just my imagination forming what I want to see. But it has its own form of beauty, but it's very solid. It's very straight. It's very kind of. It's almost as though there's an unspoken agreement that this is how you stand on a train. This is how you act or react to people. How you make room for people. It seems to be almost regulated in the mentality. In the inner being of the person. Having spoken quite recently about Shogun, the film, and samurai, the warrior aspect of Japanese culture, I wonder what's inside them. I wonder if that spirit is still somewhere that they could call on us at any moment. And what they wear to work is their uniform. It's their dark coat, their briefcase, the glasses, and very quiet, very civilized, but I wonder if that warrior is still there inside. But we don't need to use it, say we. That's the period, the era that we live in. We are so comfortable, even though there are so many problems in the world. So we don't need to express that urgency and that physical violence to be able to survive. Unless we are attacked, of course. But the Japanese gentlemen, the Japanese men, I just feel that there is an inner strength, probably inherited over hundreds of thousands of years, that will not die. The gentlemen on the train or walking through in Ginza and so on, who are so difficult to read. And I love that sort of mystery. I don't want everything explained necessarily. But it does intrigue me about the strength of character that follows through. I think it's something that not all English have necessarily. That says, no, this is how you do it. You get it right, you're a good person, you can have fun, you can smile at people, you can chat, and so on. But when it comes down to it, it's respect, do your duty, and lead a good life. And that's kind of what I read from the atmosphere I get from the Japanese men. Oh, well, I don't know, and it's not for me to say. I think there would certainly be a coming together. I think it's very interesting for me. I'd like to know what some Japanese men, young men, people who've been around for perhaps 40, 50, 60 years or whatever, their impression of Japan, how they understand Japan, the different age groups in Japan, the men, because they might have different views. I mean, some people might say, no, we don't want a war, it doesn't matter. But then if your country's under threat and your way of life is under threat, you might feel differently about it. And I think this is different to somewhere like China or Korea. So your commitment really is down to whether, if you don't do it, what happens to you? Rather than, for instance, in Japan, if you wish to take up that sort of career, it's voluntary. And I think that changes the commitment. I think they will commit to the defence of the country. I notice in certain English people a similarity to Japanese men, in that the atmosphere about them, the similarity in the atmosphere about them is that they will both show respect. An Englishman automatically will nod to somebody in a certain way which is slightly less pronounced than the Japanese way of actually bowing to some degree. But the Englishman will probably just acknowledge a little bit more slowly, less deeply. If you think of Prince Charles, Duke of Edinburgh particularly, when he meets people, he often nods his head. And that's a cultural thing. So a lot of people in England will do that. And that, of course, that does happen in Japan. I personally feel very comfortable in Japan with the atmosphere, the way it makes me feel. I feel less comfortable in France. I feel very comfortable in Italy in some ways. France, to me, is always kind of hot and cold. They either love you or they hate you, kind of thing. The Italians are loud and passionate and do their thing, they love their food, which is beautiful. So I've got a big soft spot for Italy. France is a lovely country, but I think sometimes they can be just incredibly rude. If it's a certain time of the year, they don't like the English. It's always been like that, forever. I feel much more consistency with Japanese culture, Japanese people, and so on. And I just want to know, I want to understand more about Japanese men and relationships of Japanese people to their country, to their background, their history, and their future. I feel much happier to recognise similarities between the British, certain British, and Japanese. Not just because it feels more comfortable for me, but because it's something I recognise as being a positive, good thing. I think that's why I feel, purely from a personal perspective, I feel very relaxed in Japan. I know we should stop, really, but one of the things that I just reminded myself of, we did talk about in the past of Japanese people in a generalised term. I think there's something which comes through again, which I found quite consistent, is that whatever job I've seen, or career, or whatever I've seen when we've been to Japan together, that a man is doing, seems to be an element of pride in that job. They want to get it right, and they do it absolutely correctly. And I think in the UK, it's probably, certainly in the past, been something where people get a little bit kind of sloppy about certain jobs. Yeah. So for instance, if somebody, I don't want to be unfair to anybody in the UK, but quite often, if somebody's sweeping the floor in a station, they might look as though they don't actually really care what's going on, they're just doing it because they have to, in the supermarket floor. And when I saw the chap on one of the trains in Japan, wherever we were heading, and he was so particular. He was looking for every little speck of dust so that he could feel that he'd made a complete, refreshing job to that train carriage. and the look of excitement on his face when he thought he saw some dust on the floor or something, and the disappointment immediately when he realised it wasn't. And I thought that really touched me. That attention to detail and that wish to be really good at his job. It really hit me. Their reaction, if I thanked them, that it had been recognised that they'd done a good job. That seemed to mean a lot to them, it meant a lot to me. And that was interesting because we kind of acknowledged to each other, thank you. And that was really important, and that's something that I miss, I think, probably in UK. I might say thank you, but sometimes you get a response and sometimes you don't. And some people in UK are very good, but it's not the same, and I think this comes down again to the culture. They look you in the eye, and it's a kind of commitment. You have my attention, I'm happy to do what it is that you require to the best of my ability. And there's a kind of honesty about it in that look, that they acknowledge directly to you, not just, oh, that's all right, and they're not making connection with you.
I think that acknowledgement is so important, isn't it?
If somebody acknowledges that you've done a good job and thanks you for it, and then you get that connection, that response back, saying, that's something, whatever. And it's, for me, that's a lovely moment, and it means something to me. It means a lot about the attitude, the approach, the self-respect, I suppose, that's a lot of it.
It doesn't matter, isn't it, your background, how you brought up, or anything, the education or whatever. I think as a human, I think that acknowledge each other, or respect each other.
Even from different backgrounds, different cultures. Rubbish, and then say, well, I don't want this rubbish I've created. We don't even want it on this planet. Let's stick it up there where we can't see it. What a genius. And this is the mentality of some people in the capitalist environment. They say, we can just make whatever we want, we can simplify things, it'll make us so rich and so powerful, all this information. So what do we do with the rubbish?
That is Wally's.
And this is exactly Wally, isn't it? Yeah. And this is a real person being interviewed on the BBC. And I thought the mentality, the blind stupidity of it. And we're all falling for it because we all want somewhere to stick our photographs that we're never going to look at, for the next 50 years in a cloud somewhere, and they're going to be sitting on the moon. Anyway, and it's just so banal. And then I think of a guy cleaning a train who wants that train to be really clean and pleasant for people like me to get on the train and have a nice journey in comfort and safety. And yet there are people like this who doesn't matter what mess we make, we'll just stick it somewhere else where we can't see it and pretend it doesn't happen. And that's a difference between that particular individual's attitude to the mess that we cause on this planet and the person who's taking great care about something in Japan that he wants to feel good about himself and has some self-respect. One guy cares immensely, the other guy doesn't care at all. That's the difference. Phew. I'm sorry, I'm very calm a lot of the time, but boy, oh boy, I like Japan. Thank you so much.
Okay then, shall we finish today?
Hey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you next time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm excited now.